Hi, everyone. Welcome. Just a few announcements. Three things. This Saturday is Fall Festival here at Beaumont. And what do you know what the time is? 11 to 4. And uh, all of you are welcome. There are going to be games and music. Fighting Futures is going to be here. Um, there's going to be, so it'll be fun music, games, and all kinds of other things going on here. And a food truck. Great. All right. I, we might finally break out the pickleball. We'll see. 11 to pickleball on, that's how that works. And that's Saturday, 11 to 4. And then on tonight, at least some of us are going up to see Flamey Grant tonight in Cincinnati. So anybody that wants to join, you can just buy your tickets there and just hop in my car with Ralph and me, and we'll go up and we'll see Flamey. If you haven't seen her, she's an excellent musician, really quite fine, and it'll be a good show. And that's tonight. Are you going, Harper? Are you going up to see Flamey tonight? Okay. And then the third thing was, oh yeah, April Joy is going to be here on October 13, and that's just so cool. So April and I will talk, and then we'll have a book signing in Pride Hall. So the book is Star Spangled Jesus, and it's a book about Christian nationalism. And that'll be really fun to have her here. What a privilege! We are the spot in Lexington for her for this book signing. So um, she'll be really sort of introducing it here. It comes out on October 1st, so you can either do pre-orders or else you can buy a book here when you come. And those are all the announcements. Having said that, we are so happy that you're here and you are welcome here, no matter what your race or ethnicity, no matter what your background, no matter what your socioeconomic status is. That is to say, if you are a poor college student or a rich middle-aged person, which we have so many of, you are welcome here. No matter what your, whether you are queer or straight and cisgender, we are happy that you're here. You're so welcome. And now, hear this, this opening prayer. God of renewal, we have been emptied. We remember what it felt like to have an intent so awake in us that we could not help but send it to page, to stanza, to score, or to canvas. We were dreamers once, but we have given far too much and forgotten to sustain our dreaming. Grant us rest that our creative spark might be revived, and grant us humility that we would understand it is not the responsibility of the spark to light the whole sky. Allow our art to be both simple and grand, useful and useless, that we would come unfastened from the weight of our own expectations. Remind us of what good art born from rested souls, can do in the world. Make our art tell the truth in strange places. Amen.
And with that, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about what we're going to be doing for our art time today. As you can see, we're not painting. Instead, we're going to be using words to write poetry. So a lot of you might be familiar with magnet poetry, where there's like little magnets with words on them, and you get to like piece together a poem with those word magnets. So I'm taking that idea and turning it from magnets to paper. So I've made little paper cutouts, and you all will use some Sharpies, some pens. I might need to get more because there's more of you than I expected to be here, which is great. But, ooh, okay. Anyway, that's true. That's a good point. There are pencils in the pews, but I think markers would look better. So I'll try to find some more. But anyway, so I've got a bucket of papers, and I have to, what are they called? Offering plates, yes, thank you. Blanked on them. So the written words will go in the offering plates for us to use later. There'll be like our word banks. And once the words are written, I would like you guys to get into groups of a couple of people and just randomly select different words and then try to put together a poem. You won't have to use all of the words that are written, but just a poem or two. I've got lots of colorful paper, poster paper, and also just white paper as well. And then I've got double-sided tape and adhesive tape, squares as well, to kind of put together the words. So, yeah. So this will be hopefully a fun project. And I'm gonna read. I've come up with two little prompts to kind of get your creative gears thinking about what words you want to write down to later possibly use. And so, since Logan and Edie Moon will be talking about sacred spirituality, the two prompts that I came up with are this. The first one is, what is your spiritual life like now? What are the colors? What are the shapes, the sounds, the textures, and what are the smells of it? And then the second prompt is, how has your spiritual person been shaped by the world around you and the people in it? Have there been specific times that a person or a group of people or a space or a certain event made an impact on you? Think of the sensory or the emotional experience you had in those times. And with that, I'll go around and pass out the pens and the papers. If you would like something sturdy to write on, I also have a couple of boards as well. But there's also hymnals and Bibles in the pews. Feel free to use that as well. But I'll go around and do that. And so we'll take a few minutes to write the words, and then we'll go into groups. So it looks like everyone or most have written their words, which is great. Thank you for bearing with me in the chaos. This is my first time trying this out, so thank you. So now um, we've got lots of people, so I think we could break into groups of into 4 groups, maybe even more. Um, let's see. Find a group. Or kindergarten, whichever one you want. Yeah, it could be pew groups too. Yeah. Yeah. That's okay. Okay. Perfect. So now I'm gonna go around and give you all some paper to stick the poems onto. And then I think what we'll do is, since there's only 2 offering plates with the words, we'll just have one offering plate on this side and one on this side. And so share amongst the groups. If you need words, feel free to reach cross group if that makes sense. So, all right, we'll see how this goes. So when I give the offering plates with the words, let's every person pick one word and then try to put together a poem using those first picked words. And then after that, we can use more words, or you can use more words from the offering plate to kind of string the picked words together. Does that kind of make sense? So every person picks a word and then build the poem from that with more words. Just pick one, and those are going to be the like skeleton of the poem. Okay. This is so chaotic. Okay, thank you. So we're going to start wrapping this up. If you're still working on the poem, that's okay. You feel free to leave it kind of where it is, and we can finish it after service. But to help us transition into our talk, I'm going to read a confession and forgiveness from Black Liturgies. Because it sounds like someone really needs it. So, Creator God, we confess that we have confined ourselves to the binaries of analytical and artistic, logician and poet, instead of existing in the full complexity of our humanity. That which is feeling and creative, we have made optional as opposed to vital, and we destroy far more than we create. Forgive us, and in your mercy, restore our relationship to the artistry that dwells within us all. Amen. Forgiveness. Let your soul receive this rest. You are remade by the same divine force that made the star and flower petal, the sacred artist who crafted you in their holy image. Mercy over you as you reclaim every beautied fragment and resurrect the creative in you. Amen.
I am unmuted now. Thank you all so much for your creative art time. I'm going to let this crew up here finish taping theirs on because they've got it together, so that's great. But while that's happening, our favorite Edie Moon is going to talk with me today. So come on up here, Edie. Well, you can welcome Edie as she comes up. So to kind of set the stage, the last time you spoke, you were talking with John, and it kind of invigorated creativity in me. I literally bought every book that you put in that paper. I went on Amazon. Oh, yeah, no, please grab them. And so that's kind of, for those of you who weren't here, that service is on YouTube, so definitely check it out. And then we'll, this is going to kind of be, in some ways, a part two, in some ways, its own kind of conversation, continuing that. And while Edie is getting situated, perfect, I kind of wanted to start with what you are currently thinking about, reading, and just something in your life that's popping up as sacred to you currently today that you feel like brings you closer to God or the divine.
Well, first of all, I'm going to thank you, Logan, we just had such a great chat in John's office for 30 minutes before, and it's so good to see all of you, and thank you so much for the honor and privilege of being able to share today.
Oh, you'll need to hold this a little closer.
Thank you. Nobody's ever told me my voice is too soft. All right, there's a first for everything. But thank you so much for allowing me the privilege of coming today. Such a joy to have my aunt and uncle who are visiting from Florida, and my husband, Jack. And so, you know, it's going to sound a little weird, but I thought of there's so many things that are sacred that makes me feel closer to God. But I realize, I'll tell you the most recent thing. I was watching Bill Gates. He has this show, and it was all about AI. And the idea behind the show, I don't think was necessarily to say AI is the best thing that's ever happened to us, and so therefore let's really get on that crazy train and ride. I think what he was trying to do was, you know, present different perspectives. But the more I watched it, I realized, to me, one of the most sacred things is the human experience. And if we lose the human experience, I feel like this will be such an intense, profound loss. And as I shared with some of you last time, I'm a theater director and teacher and deviser and these different things. And so much of it is the human experience, the human touch and contact. It's something that you absolutely, cannot do really virtually. You can, and we saw people do plays online, and maybe some of you were in those plays and different things online during COVID, but you're losing so much when you don't have that relationship, even physically. And so to me, that's something that I've really been thinking a great deal about, that's sacred, that brings me closer to God. The second thing that I've really felt since I moved to Kentucky especially is nature. Ada Limon is the poet laureate of the United States, and I'm one of her biggest fans, and she put together a book of poems that she curated of poets all around the U.S., or the world, not just the U.S., about nature and where we are in relationship to nature today.
Wow.
And it is I didn't bring it today, but I want to recommend it to you. That book has just the idea of nature as sacred, and that's not a new idea, is it? I mean, yes. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm really bad with titles. I can tell you about every poem in it, but then someone asks me the title, and I'm like, huh? I'm just reading too many books at once. This is a problem. Can you? Yeah, it's.
Oh, it's called Poetry in the Natural World.
Yes, that was not hard. Why did I not know that? That's exactly what it is, poetry in the natural world.
I'm so glad someone asked that because I was so afraid. I'm like, I'm going to forget this before this talk's over.
And if you get
I'm
the
not gonna
book,
go on Amazon.
I will send you my prompts of poetry writing that I created from the poems in that book.
Oh, wow. Poetry in
the
natural world.
Oh. Right. Yeah, but poetry in the natural world makes sense because that's the sacredness she's talking about, or that from the poems that she put together. The other thing I'll just add, there's so many things, but I think healing in relationships is something else that right now is very sacred to me, brings me closer to God, that belief that God can heal and that God can lead to forgiveness that leads to reconciliation. And I know that seems like a far shot for a lot of people, but I believe it.
Well, and that's so beautiful, right? Because as someone, especially in contexts like these, so I can speak for myself, I'm not going to speak for anyone else but myself here. The challenge is I can let go, right? So I can do that art of letting go.
Sure.
But I'm never going to forget it.
Right.
Because it's ingrained in me.
Right.
And it doesn't, that doesn't mean it traumatizes me.
Right.
But it's ingrained in me. So I'm curious, it's just a piggyback, how do you think the relationship of forgiveness and healing and reconciliation works while your brain refuses to let you forget?
Right. And that's such a good question, and that's a whole nother, thing. But I will say I've been reading a lot of Richard Rohr, and he's got some really good ideas about how we've gotten things all wrong, and in churches and different things. But one of the things is believing that as you pray, that there's this change, that's meant to happen in you that brings you to the place where you actually could not believe that it could ever happen, but you actually could forgive. I'll be, I've seen it in my own family. Like 20 years ago, situations that had kind of pulled us apart, and I didn't think there could ever be a coming back together. That wasn't something that I consciously made happen in any way. But I felt that as I thought it through and committed myself to it over and over again, and that somehow we could bridge that gap. And I still remember it. I still, Logan, remember the incidences. I still remember the hurt. I still remember all of that. Yeah. But I do believe that a work can be done that is supernatural. It's not something that you can just, define, or it's something that happens within. And then it affects the without. And I could talk many I could talk a lot more about that and give a lot more examples, but I don't want to get us off track. But
Yeah.
I don't want to minimize your question though,
Re-
because it's probably one of the most important questions we can ask in
Yeah.
our faith.
Well,
you know?
and you're
And
kind of
just-
getting me to like the next point because we're going to inner life
Yeah.
next, and that's kind of what
Yeah.
triggered my thought process. Was there's a lot of things out there
Yeah,
that has to do with forgiveness of like,
right.
is me working on something inner,
Mhm.
right? So what are
Right.
like tools and resources that are speaking to you currently that you're currently utilizing to start working on yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
and it's a good thing. I do it all the time, go to therapy, but most of the time when I go to therapy, therapists are giving me tools and resources to
Right.
work out myself. And then I
Right.
go yell at them for 50 minutes as to why it was all bullshit and didn't work. And then we
Yeah, and
rinse,
then you're
rinse
like,
wash,
okay.
repeat that very conversation. So what are those things that are kind of helping you in your inner life?
Well, one of the keys, and this is a quote of a book I read recently, the idea that God is good, loving, inclusive. That's not the quote. That's me. The idea of that because my background, and I don't put this on my parents at all, but we don't know who influenced us spiritually as we're growing up. We don't even know who's influencing our kids. What are they hearing? What did they hear in Sunday school? What did you guys hear, from this person, that person? We don't know. But what I realized is I started to get this view of God as something unattainable that I would never reach. I probably went to what they call the altar, probably went down there 1,000 times. The one time I didn't go was when Billy Graham was speaking, and I thought I was going to burn in hell. And I literally couldn't sleep for days because I didn't go when Billy Graham did, And I
Oh,
realized,
no.
yeah, I know. And I realized, okay, this is not right. And I've had to come a long way in that.
Right.
So I told you about Richard Rohr, but he said, good religion keeps God free for the people and keeps people free for God. And the idea of that freedom and not seeing it as something that's puts you in bondage, having that relationship spiritually, but something that frees you, and that we're also freeing God to be the bigness of God that you've heard John reference in the past and different things, instead of putting each other and God in a box where it only has to fit this. And if it doesn't, we're really in trouble. The other thing I wanted to add was just something that's speaking to me, that's changing my inner life, is understanding joy. I don't know if any of you guys tend to be a little dark.
Yeah.
Is anybody in here a little dark in their everyday,
Yes.
or are you what I call zippity-doo-dah? My husband is a really positive zippity-doo-dah guy, and that does not mean that he is shallow, and it does not mean that he doesn't care about what's going on. But he's such a good balance, the yin and yang for me, because I can get dark because I'm an empath. And how many of you are empaths? I know we have empaths in this room. They're not holding their hands up, but I know they're there.
Yeah.
And I believe them that they're there. But if you're an empath and you're taking in what other people are going through and you're feeling it in your heart, then you're going to get dark sometimes. It's hard to kind of move above that,
Yeah, and I think in that too, and you were alluding to this with the Billy Graham statement, which was like so tragic and sad, is it feels like there's branches within Christendom specifically, and even some Catholicism, and Richard Rohr, I've heard him talk about,
Yeah.
criticizing many within his own
Yeah, he
faith
does,
practice
he
that
does.
have done this, but there is this very narcissistic view
Right.
of God,
Right.
and by that it punishes people.
Right.
And specifically certain
Right.
groups of people that don't fit within their tribe or their camps.
Right,
And
right.
how many of us have experienced the damage of that?
Right.
That just
Right.
feels so underselling. And it's interesting, right? Because when we're talking about having an inner life,
Right.
that actually requires God to be good.
Right.
God to
exactly.
be better
Exactly.
than
Exactly.
we think.
Yeah.
God to not put people on the margins despite what most of our culture tells us.
Right.
That's exactly what God does.
And it also requires us, again, to give God freedom to be that loving and that forgiving and all of those things.
Right.
And if we are sort of trapped in our own faith and not seeing freedom for ourselves, then we're also not seeing it. It's reciprocal, you know, in our relationship with God. So I think it's so important. I think what you're saying, to go from egocentric to soul-centric, you know, and more of a contemplative mind instead of calculating everything in faith or what happens in religion where everything's calculated, everything's a rule, everything's a, you know, a punishment, or you do this right and you will earn the golden ticket. You don't do this right and you're really in trouble. You know, so I love the idea of soul-centric and contemplative so that we can access that. I have a lot of really bad dreams, really bad dreams. My dreams, I'm always failing people. My uncle's a counselor and a psychologist, so I'm like, okay. Anyway, I haven't talked to him about it, but I have terrible dreams of failing people. And I've decided I'm going to somehow ask God to intervene in my subconscious so that I can stop having these dreams. Like terrible failures, or like I'm involved in a conspiracy where I'm betraying people and people are mad at me. And I don't know if anybody has dreams like that. And as a director, I always dream that I'm directing a play, but I'm late and I've failed all the children. So that's another dream I have. And you'll have that a lot if you're in the arts. But I'm going to ask God to, you know, to be a part of that subconscious and free me from that. And that's part of my inner life journey too, that subconscious life.
Yeah, something you've been talking to us about in a really beautiful way is using our senses, specifically the body, in a connection point with God through theater and other means, which is honestly, unless it's like rooted in some kind of pseudo weird, the Bible tells me so BS, that is not welcome in most communities. So kind of walk us through different art forms that actually that can connect us to God, that we really wouldn't think of as ways to connect with God. Because, and when I say connect with God, I don't mean in like some narcissistic, he wants all this worship thing. I'm talking about something that makes us more contemplative in nature, makes us more connection to our inner life, that connects us to each other. Because I think that's truly what God's interested in.
And community is such a big part of everything I'm talking about too. Thank you, Logan, for asking me about the theater forms that have had an impact on my spiritual life. I shared about some of them briefly last time, but not very much. And so I just want to share with you guys about Theater of the Oppressed. And Theater of the Oppressed is like a big umbrella. And there was a man in Brazil named Augusto Boal, and he saw what was happening in Brazil, and he saw, you know, what was happening to the poor. He saw what was happening, how their lives were just getting ripped to shreds. The political leaders were just wiping out whole communities, and he was like, we've got to do something through the arts that can prepare and equip people. And he started building Theater of the Oppressed activities and opportunities, and you can read whole books about it, and some of you may have. But you use a lot of physical theater in this because it's about building community, but it's also about being engaged, not being preached to, but being engaged, physically engaged. So that is one of the forms, of those forms. And under Theater of the Oppressed, you have image theater, you have all these playback theater, you have all these forms of theater that you can break down. And through the years, I've had the joy of being trained in some of these forms and then training my students over in Korea in these forms. The other form is one that's called Buto theater, and it's a Japanese theater, and it came out of post-war Japan. It actually, in 1959, was the first published form of Butoh theater. And if you see Butoh theater, it might be jarring for you. You might just be a little bit like, oh my goodness, what are we watching here? But basically the idea behind it is that everybody has a dance within them that already exists and that it needs to emerge from within. So it's a form of dance theater. It started in dance, but then moved to theater. But the other idea is that what we consider beauty, they were dealing with fighting the confines of beauty as it's established by society and saying that isn't necessarily what is beautiful. What is beautiful can be what is within us and expressed from within us. And so I had the opportunity to do some Butoh theater training myself. And sometimes people seem like they're in a trance, but they call it hyper-presence, where you're hyper-aware of what you're doing and creating with your body. And nobody's watching each other necessarily as you do it. You just create, you have your eyes closed. So for me, guys, I've had a weight problem most of my life, and living in Korea where everybody's like a size 2 or 3, right? I mean, through the years now, they're eating Western food, so, things are changing that way. But, my whole life, I could speak Korean. I knew what people were saying. Not that Koreans are all talking about you on the street. It's just, certain people will talk about you and say, wow, she's fat, that kind of thing, and you're having to deal with it. So you get this self-consciousness with your body, and I just was like, I don't want to. I'm a theater director, and I'm nervous about getting up in front of my kids because I feel self-conscious. Wow. And what Butoh helped me do, and these other forms, theater of the press, was to release that. And I remember just sobbing through one of the activities because I just felt like, and I also live with chronic pain. Oh, wow. So I was tapping into the pain that I feel instead of trying to fight against it. And it was just such a healing experience in the end. Wow. So these are forms that have just meant the world to me. There are also forms that build community. And I wonder, do we have a second to try this activity?
Oh, sure.
Would you guys be brave with me today and be willing to try something? I really, Logan said just make 5 people.
Yeah.
Come. And I'm not in any way, there's no judgment because there's no right or wrong. And you're not going to be performing. I just want to do something I do with Theater of the Oppressed to build community. Would anybody be willing to join me? I just need you to take a number and be in a circle. And I'm going to ask you, don't have to go around and pretend you're a dog or a giraffe. You don't have to do anything. Trust me. Would anyone feel brave? You know what? No, because you do have to do one thing that might be hard to. I'm so sorry. Can I thank you though for being willing? How brave of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, we got all the generations.
Yes.
Who else is willing to come? Anybody else?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, and that gets us 4. We just need one more person.
Yeah.
You're the best. Thank you.
Yeah, this is fun.
I love the daisies on your dress. Okay, loving that. All right, what I'd like to do is for you to imagine that this is the woven community. Okay, and later on, maybe you'll trust me and all of us will do this together because I'm used to doing it with 20 people. So I'm going to ask if we can move this table just slightly.
Absolutely.
And what I'm going to ask is I'm going to give you each a number. And each piece of paper has a number on it. All right. So all you have to do is 2 things. One is mingle. You know how when you're at a party and you mingle? So can we all just, without talking, just mingle? Just walk around here, just mingle, mingle. All right. Good, good. You guys are amazing. This is great mingle. You don't really say anything meaningful, you just mingle. All right. Now, we're only going to stay in this little circle right here. Oh, I need you to have my mic. We're only, okay, we just mingled. For everybody, we just mingled. We're only going to stay in this little circle. Now, when I call out a number, that person needs to start dropping to the floor. and everybody else is going to catch them, okay? You cannot let them drop, all right? You got this? So do you know your number? You know your number? All right. Now, can I ask for a couple people to be spotters? Can you help us, Logan? John, can you, we've got, look at these great spotters, guys, just in case, because we don't have a big group. So get tight in there and mingle. Now, when I call your number, you don't say anything, you just start dropping, and these people need to catch you, all right? And that's a fact. Ready? Mingle. Mingle, mingle. Spotters are ready on the outside. 3. All right, now John's not in the game, but he caught him. You may as well be in the game, my friend. Very good. Mingle. When you have a lot more people, you have a lot more people who can catch. Mingle. 2. Excellent, excellent. Ready? Mingle. 5. Oh, good job, good job. Mingle. 1. Whoa! That was close. And we are so sorry we didn't catch you in time. But we almost caught you. We almost caught you. Red. Mingle. 4. Whoa! Beautiful. All right. All right. Can you guys give them a big hand?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Can you guys stand here with me, the minglers? So the reason we do, I think you all are very intelligent people. But if you think of this as your woven church, the fact of the matter is that at some time, somebody in this group is going to drop. And we can't just let them go to the floor. We've got to be there for each other. We've got to catch each other in any way we can. It might just be with one arm. It might just be whatever. But we have to, in the body of Christ, in a community like this, be there for each other and catch each other. And all of us will fall. That's the other thing. There's nobody that doesn't fall, right? But it also, how many of you felt a little nervous, like, I loved that you were just like, man, I'm going down. I am going down. And they better do their jobs. I love that about you. And because you are also having to have faith that you will be caught and trust. Thank you. Can you, again, huge round of applause. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, that's great because it leads me kind of to where the last 2 spots where we're going to wrap this up.
Yeah.
And that is, so we've done 2 really creative endeavors today with words and with the trust exercise. And so what role, in your view, does creativity play in sacredness?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good question. Logan, you just killed it on these questions. There's an amazing director named Anne Bogart, and she says, oh no, that's not who said it. You know who said it? Your Black Liturgies writer
Cole
said
Arthur
it.
Riley.
And I underlined almost every line in This Here Flesh, which is her book, but it's so beautifully written. But she says, a life that is holy is a life that allows for all of your uncertainties, your curiosities, and unbelief, holds them as sacred. To be liberated spiritually means to be spiritual creatives.
Wow.
So I think to have a creative attitude about your spiritual life, you know, and see it artistically is so key. And so much can happen from that. There's another director named Anne Bogart who wrote a whole book on the power of resonance as artists. And she said, our job as artists is to become consciously resonant to the world rather than alienated from it, to connect with others and to create conditions of resonance. Our goal is to connect. And I think what creativity does and what art does is it provides us a means of connecting. And it also provides us a way of expressing what is actually happening in the world. And if you ever get a chance, the writer Edwidge Danticut, she's a Haitian writer, and she's written a book. And I thought she came up with this idea, but it was actually Albert Camus, who wrote a little booklet called Create Dangerously. And I based a lot of my lessons in school, I would start each year with this. Because as artists too, and I think this is part of sacredness and spirituality, is for us to be willing to create dangerously. Don't forget, you guys, that whenever a country is taken over by a dictator or a totalitarian leader, they kill the artists first. Why do they put the artists in prison first? Why do they get rid of them first? Yeah, because they're the inspiration for the people. Is that what you? Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's what I thought. And you want to get rid of anybody that will inspire the people, because then you can't oppress them. You can't oppress people that are inspired or are inspiring each other.
Yeah.
And telling the truth about what's actually happening in the world. Wow. So I always encourage my students to create dangerously. And I don't mean that to be, I don't mean the word dangerously to mean do something that's going to offend everybody in sight. It doesn't have to be offensive, but it can be dangerous.
Wow.
You know, saying things that other people aren't willing to say. So that to me is a really important part of it.
Yeah, and I'm just so grateful to both you and to Daniel for giving us space, because I think one of the other challenges is, and especially with what you're talking about with creating dangerously, is people like to oppress people with time.
Yes.
So we get tied up, and they keep us busy.
Yes.
And so often people want to spend more time creating, but their schedule and their calendar is so full, right? Because we say the phrase here, always welcome, never obligated, for here, because we know that you're obligated almost everywhere else.
Yeah.
And there will be extreme obligations in so many other things.
Right.
Certain people have different family dynamics that have more obligations depending on what things are coming down. Different job obligations depending on what your career path is.
Exactly.
And so my really last word and how I want to end this is, what is your advice on how we engage in creativity in really hectic times where we don't have a lot of time or bandwidth to do that creative act?
And again, I think that's the best question ever, because you're right. He's got 2 jobs right now, and he's working here or doing ministry, ministering to people here at the church. And there's no
downtime.
There's no telling. That there's no downtime. But you know what I really believe is we have to try so hard to make our definition of what creativity is and what we create, the value of it. We need to be fair to ourselves.
Yeah.
I used to think that when I was telling Logan, when I had journals back in the day, I used to think if they weren't perfect, then I just have to throw them away. And I would always mess it up, always. But I remember Madeline Lingle from years ago, she wrote something about journaling. She was like, my journal is not neat. It's a mess. And now I have, my journals are insane. Every page is some other thought, idea, person I met, concept, every single page. And you know what? It's beautiful.
Yep.
It doesn't have to. I think what slows us down is when we think, oh, I have to do a painting, but it needs to be this. Or I have to write this poem, and I better finish. I think we just take the minutes in life as they come. We see the sacred in the ordinary. We read everything written by Ross Gay on taking delight and joy in life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The poet.
Yeah.
And we just, we're always eyes open. Eyes wide up. So one of my mantras for life is see through deeply. And that just means every minute of every day, there's something under the layers. So I'll share one last book with you. Sorry, guys, you can tell I used to be never mind. This is a book by Terry Tempest Williams and Fazal Sheikh. And it's called The Moon is Behind Us. So what happened was Fazal is a photographer. And he started sending his photos from all over the world to Terry Tempest Williams, who's a genius writer and poet and naturalist. And it just goes on and on. She started writing him a letter for every picture that he sent her.
Wow.
And the letters are just beautifully, beautifully written. But it wasn't a big deal, it wasn't a big It wasn't like, we're going to make a book of this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to. The people who say that to you want to inspire you and encourage you, but it's okay if you don't even show what you're creating to other people. And so, but in the end, the letters were so good, he said, we're going to publish it. And that's what this book is. You have the picture and the letters. And they're just really amazing. But it's not always going to end in a published work, right, Logan?
Yeah.
But the fact is that you're allowing yourself those minutes, what I call pockets of delight, you know, where you just find a pocket, you just maybe write in your butt book. I always carry a butt book. And I got that from Alan Wolf, my friend. You carry it in your butt pocket, and you write it down. And you're creating, you know? So I think being fair to ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I would like to do.
Yeah, I love that because that's hard.
It is hard.
Because that
It
means
is
you're
hard.
tapping into something that's beautiful and above yourself, because it's
Right.
hard.
It's hard.
Because
yeah.
we have to just allow ourselves to be present-minded, and most of us probably think in the past or the future. We're
Right.
always thinking about what's next or what's behind, but actually being in the moment to capture those moments.
I just heard someone say, worrying about the past is depression, worrying about the future is anxiety. So maybe what we should do is focus in the present. And I don't know how true that is, Jim. I don't know that that's, you know, if we can prove that in a court of law. But I will say that there was something to that.
Yeah.
And it really spoke to me.
Yes, Edie, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Logan.
you. Thank
so
you.
much.
I
Thank you,
appreciate
everyone.
you being here.
What a privilege. Thank you. I'll leave my books here, and if you guys just want to read through them afterwards, please feel free. They're all here.
That's amazing. We're going to go to a time at the table as we wrap up the service.